Hey everyone, I'm just making a quick video here to give you all a taste of individual Christianity. I realized in the Kickstarter video that I just gave a quick little elevator pitch of what the book is about, with some theological jargons thrown in for the fun of it. But I realized I didn't quite give you all a good idea of what the book, specific enough of an idea of what the book is about. So I decided to try giving you all a pre-edited version of the introduction of my book. Now keep in mind when you listen to this has not been given to a professional editor yet to go through, revise, and all of that. This is like me working through the manuscript for like the fourth time trying to polish it up, and it has not gone through any professional work at all. It is just my thoughts on the page, as well as I could say them without, as well as I could deliver them without professional help. So if you like this pre-edited version of the introduction to individual Christianity, you might want to join in the campaign to make it, the Kickstarter campaign to make it happen. And if you don't enjoy it, if you don't enjoy it, then it's not for you. Then it's not for you. But I wanted to give you all a taste of the books so you can make a better decision on whether or not you think it's worth your money. Thank you for the time, and please enjoy the book.
There is a common problem I see in modern Christianity. It is not a new problem or a problem of a specific generation, denomination, or subgroup of humans. This is a problem that has been limiting the cause of Christ for centuries. This problem is also lowering the view of the lost half of God's children and causing an obnoxious amount of infighting among the family of God. Sadly, this problem has existed since the days of the apostles, and it will probably continue long after I am gone. In my years of living, having been born, raised, and continuing in the church, I have noticed this problem in every church I have been a part of, and have even been guilty of falling into this trap myself in certain points of my life. I notice this problem does exist more in certain denominations than in others, but it is still a consistent enough of a problem to prompt me to write this book. The problem is a lack of individual Christians living out their faith individually. Many Christians follow a hive mind when it comes to their faith, doctrines, and even matters of their personal lives at home. Many in the Baptist realm, of which I am born and raised, mock and ridicule the Roman Catholics for blindly following what the Pope, Cardinal, Priest, or whatever tells them to believe, but do the exact same thing when you ask them why they believe women should or should not wear certain clothing by simply echoing what their pastor teaches on the matter. Many Christians on the conservative side of politics mock the liberal snowflake for blindly following a politician or ideology, but many of the same people cannot peacefully have a conversation on doctrine or standards without solely quoting their pastor or theologian of choice while being offended or indignant that you ask such a question. I have seen so many Christians in my life behaving like sheep by following a man or a group of men when it comes to standards, doctrines, and political thought, but they cannot give you their own reasons for why they believe what they believe or why they live and behave the way they do. They will go as far as to belittle anyone who disagrees with their hive mind and lock themselves into echo chambers where their school of thought will only be reinforced instead of challenged and strengthened, or challenged and changed. This problem is resulting in the decay of Christianity, where Christians who hinder the cause of Christ turn God's soldiers into God's protesters. These Christians turn themselves into sheep, like Jesus called them, while ignoring his command to be therefore wise as serpents and harmless as doves, as Matthew 10 verse 16 tells us. God never called his children to be mindless sheep following whatever leader happened to be around them. While he did call us his sheep in multiple passages, he never called us to be sheep. The fact that we are called sheep is more of an insult than anything, considering the notorious lack of intelligence, self-awareness, and self-care that sheep exhibit. Jesus did, however, call us to be wise as a serpent, which only needs a simple amount of logic or internet research to find the meaning behind that teaching. Let me give you a few personal examples of this sheepish behavior, which is a massive problem in Christianity today. The first example was in a Sunday school class when a lady went on a King James only rant. In her rant, she made the comment, "Now I haven't studied this for myself, but," and proceeded to rant against the video teaching series we were using at the time, which used either the NIV or ESV. That phrase that she said alone displays a problem with this hive mind thinking. Christians seemingly do not study matters out for themselves and simply follow what their pastor or denominational structure sets forward for them to believe. In another case of this problem, I was having a discussion on a hobby I had picked up with another Christian who believed strongly that no Christian should be okay with this hobby, much less participate in it. This person ranted, giving unstudied and out-of-context passages which barely made their point, yet this person only used their pastor's explanations and thoughts on the matter. When I became tired of hearing someone else's thought through this person's voice, I asked the person, "What do you think on this subject?" Which they responded with the cop-out answer, "Well, that's a conversation you should have with your pastor." Imagine their horror and indignation when I told them that I have had that conversation with that pastor and I disagree with him on it. In another case, I was having a conversation with a friend I was going to Bible college with on whether it was okay for a Christian to listen to secular music, much less a preacher. Do not get me started on the double standard of setting pastors, preachers, ministers, etc. on standard pedestals that will require another book. My argument consisted of logic and Bible passages, while his argument consisted of quoting our pastor and assistant pastor at the time. This weak line of arguing came from a theology major who was going to college to become a better preacher. This shows that the problem of this sheepish hive mind is not limited to the lay Christian, but pervades all levels of Christianity. These are just some of many stories that I could tell from my interactions with Christians around me on matters that either is discussed nowhere in the Bible by its 40 authors or is mentioned as a discretionary matter. Yet these matters are grounds for shunning and loss of salvation, sarcastically speaking, of course. Many good Christians have been thrown out of churches because of their lack of blindly following everything their pastor or chosen hero of the faith demands. Heaven help these discarded saints if they commit the unforgivable sin of sticking around that church and openly questioning the traditions that are demanded of them from their men of God. There are multiple problems with this hive mind mentality. The first problem is that it weakens our argument on the matter because it reflects how well a person knows their religious traditions and not how much they know about the Bible. Another problem is it makes Christianity look like a cult when every Christian has to think the same way on every single matter or they are not a real Christian. It also makes it easy for a member of a cult to persuade someone to join their cult because they can easily point out how the Christian is just following a set of beliefs that are handed down to them by a religious institution, which could make it easier for the cult member to pit religious systems against each other instead of proving what is right or wrong. The same point could be made for arguing against an atheist. The big problem with this hive mind thinking is that it weakens the Christian to the point of not genuinely knowing where they stand on matters, which can weaken their faith to the point of joining a cult or running away from God entirely. This should never be the case among God's family, and the Bible never taught Christians to have this hive mind, which will be proven throughout the book. Seeing this massive issue in the churches I grew up in and am currently investing my life in is such a massive stain in the church that I feel the need to write this book as an effort to remove this stain as much as I can. This has required ongoing personal study and meditation on the concept of individual Christianity, as well as some measure of ongoing practice in properly exercising this truth in my life. I have attempted to fully study out this concept as far as I can from multiple sources, going back even to the pioneer of this thinking, Martin Luther. I read his treatises which brought this teaching back into popular Christianity, since the Catholic Church had eliminated the teachings centuries before him. My goal in giving all this research is simply to give as much evidence for my stance on the matter as much as possible, and to follow the counsel of Proverbs 11:14, which says, "Where no counsel is the people fall, but in the multitude of counselors there is safety." If you read some of my sources, or any other book on this topic for that matter, you will notice that I will take a different angle to this topic than most authors have. Many of the books written on this subject focus on the ministering aspect of the priesthood and how each church member should be involved and invested in the local church's functions, the main focus of Watchman Nee's book. Others focus on evangelical aspect of the priesthood and focus on how every Christian should be preaching the gospel to every creature, as Mark 16:15 tells us, instead of leaving it up to the church staff, clergy, pastors, or whatever religious tradition refers to them. This is the focus of You Are Chosen by Herschel H. Hobbs. Those are valid and truthful analyses and applications of the topic, but not the focus of this book. This work will focus on the individual Christian developing their own beliefs, standards, and opinions based on how the Bible and their individual walk with the Lord enables them to live, think, and worship. There are many different aspects of the topic which I encourage you to research out all of these on your own. To fully understand this subject and how to live it out individually in our lives, we need to understand this common problem further. Understanding the foundational truth of the individual priesthood of the believer, along with the history of how this truth has been taught or ignored, will also be necessary before we understand the law and how improper views of the law has resulted in modern legalism. After learning about these matters, we can learn about the individual liberty which we can experience and enjoy in our lives from this foundational truth. Learning these truths will expose some potential dangers that can result from people not properly understanding or living out this truth in their lives. Observing our motives in the decisions we make will help us make better decisions. We will need to clarify some matters that will come up in our study before we hit this topic that fully understanding this subject will help prevent.